of their more battle-hardened comrades which shocked them the most.
Our commanders told us to be humane, yet I remember one episode when one of them aimed his machine gun at a camel and shot it. I was horrified. Why did you do that, I asked. Is this animal guilty of anything? Has he done anything wrong? And he said, yesterday my friend was killed. He completely tore apart the animal because he was mad with anger.
Despite the strength of the Soviet forces, they were not immune to the harsh realities on the ground. Conditions were appalling, and disease was rife.
In Afghanistan, I fell ill with typhoid. There was a point when I became blind and nearly dead from emaciation. Rats came and ate from my plate. I could feel them crawling. I think it was my friends who saved me.
Good food may have been hard to come by, but there was an abundant supply of one of Afghanistan's most infamous of products, heroin.
It was towards the end of the war that heroin appeared. That time, in every restaurant, they practically had heroin in place of mustard. It was no problem to get drugs.
As the war dragged on, soldiers even deserted the battlefield, choosing to stay on in Afghanistan rather than face certain punishment in the USSR. And those who did stay and fight increasingly began to suffer the effects of events back home. For by the mid-80s, serious cracks were appearing in the communist system itself. The Iron Curtain was starting to fall. The inflexible and inefficient command economy was unable to respond to the needs of citizens at home and on the battlefield.
I went to our base asking for new winter underclothes. They asked, how much did it cost? In thousands of rubles. And I said that it was only one set of underclothes I needed, and not an order worth thousands of rubles. They said they couldn't help me, and told me to go on serving without underwear. It was a humiliation to be told to go to the mountains where snow lies without proper clothes.
The Mujahideen, however, faced no such problems. For them, high-tech weapons from various sources poured in through Pakistan.
It was in the middle of the war that they started receiving good military equipment. They had Stingers SAM missiles, Chinese-made large-caliber chain guns, and British handheld rocket launching devices too. In other words, after we destroyed a caravan, we found as many different weapons as in a whole military museum.
But it was often the crudest of weapons which was the most effective, the landmine.
I was inspecting a position which had been abandoned by the Mujahideen. I made a step and a mine exploded under my feet. I heard the sound of the blast and at first decided that it was someone other than me who had stepped on the mine near me. But then I started to lose consciousness and I said to myself, my dream has come true. One night, before I'd departed to Afghanistan, I'd had a dream. I saw myself standing somewhere in Kiev in my full dress uniform, and through one of the trouser legs, I could see that my right leg was a prosthetic device.
When Valery returned to the USSR, his fellow countrymen were almost entirely ignorant about the war that was being mounted in Afghanistan and of the extent of the Soviet losses. The communist regime and its military censor ensured only the bare minimum was reported. The Soviet people may have been denied information about the war, but not so the rest of the world.
The Russians left quite a long time ago.
The conflict was becoming not only a proxy Cold War, but a propaganda battle as well. Alleged Soviet atrocities were broadcast around the globe, turning many, especially in the Muslim world, against them. The famous Hollywood film Rambo 3 portrays the Soviets as sadistic killers, resisted by a heroic American agent and noble Mujahideen freedom fighters. Veterans, however, deny that civilians were ever their deliberate targets.
Once we got an order to destroy a mosque, as we received intelligence from Afghan sources that militant leaders were going to gather there. Afterwards, the strike footage was broadcast in the West, showing us approaching, the airstrike, piles of dead bodies, women, children, but it had all been a setup. You see, the film crew had been tipped off, and we had been deceived. First,
in 1987, with pressure mounting from the international community for the USSR to pull out, and with Soviet prestige in tatters, negotiations were started for a withdrawal.
Gorbachev realized that a war that had lasted for 10 years was leading us nowhere. And most Western governments told us that they wouldn't collaborate or discuss anything with the USSR until our troops were withdrawn.
Before things get too far out of hand.
Many in the West were jubilant that the USSR had been the very mujahideen they'd funded them in years to come. On February the 15th, 1989, the last Soviet soldier left Afghanistan, crossing the bridge leading home on foot. According to official estimates, the conflict left 15,000 Soviet soldiers dead and 50,000 injured. For those returning to their homes, another battle was only just beginning.